next guest is a world-renowned orthopedic surgeon and sports medicine expert who's helped everyone from crash victims to Olympians. Please welcome Dr. Bert Mandelbaum and his friend and patient with an amazing story to tell, Cliff Meidl. So, Doc, you met Cliff almost 30 years ago when he'd been in an unspeakable accident. Now looking at him and thinking of everything that's you've gone through together, what does Cliff mean to you? What's his story tell you?
It's an amazing story. You know, I've taken care of lots of athletes before coming back from an injury doing sport, but never an individual having a significant injury and coming back to become an Olympic athlete. This is a unique story in all of athletics.
Cliff, take us back to that day in 1986. What exactly happened to you?
Well, I was working on a job site. I was a young kid, only 20 years of age, and I was operating a jackhammer. And I ended up jackhammering right through this concrete and hit these 3 unmarked buried power lines and got a shock of a life, if you want to say to the least. And so, you know, with electricity, it's one of those things where you can't see it, but you sure as heck can feel it. And I remember at that moment, the lights were out, and ended up fighting for my life at the time because of the large amount of electricity. My heart ended up stopping. And they had to do CPR on me. And my mom always says, well, I guess you can't kill a weed, right? You're here for a reason. But the thing was, it was a big, escapade for the family. You know, we were never prepared for an adversity of that magnitude. My parents really didn't know what to do. I was unconscious for 16 hours. And then I woke up learning that I was in this huge accident. And I was locked onto this jackhammer for about 20 seconds. So it was a very traumatic experience. And I really had to fight for life to be able to live.
You felt it? Like you physically felt it and then it was lights out?
Yeah, initially I could feel this jolt and then the lights were out, yeah.
So what happened was when you were in the hole, you fell in, and literally the electricity had to have escape routes. Yeah. And it blew your holes in your jeans.
Yeah, see what happens was I ended up hitting the power line and I got blasted out of the hole.
Look at that.
And then I slid back down in the hole and my knees got sucked into the jackhammer. So I was locked on there for about 20 seconds at a time. But, you know, electricity, it behaves much differently than, for example, getting burned by a fire. It burns from the inside out, creating these things called exit wounds. So I had multiple burns throughout my body, but most of the damage was done to both my left and right knee compartment. I had about a third of the knee bone disintegrated in both legs. Yeah.
So, I mean, you truly are a walking miracle sitting in front of us. Explain, you said 30,000 volts of electricity. Put that in my mind. How much is that really?
That's multiples of what it would take to kill you. Multiples of that. So it's significant amount of shock to his heart, to his legs, trauma, like he described, that you wouldn't believe.
You were pronounced dead 3 times?
Yeah, on the way to the hospital. Yeah, my heart gave out a couple of times in the paramedic van, and that's when my mother received that telephone call that nobody ever wants to get from the job foreman on the job site. And he told my mother, you know, specifically, well, Cliff's been involved in this horrific accident. And then he follows it up with, we don't know if he's going to live. So you need to get to the hospital immediately. So that's when my mom and dad showed up and saw me in this state of condition. Yeah.
So, Doc, you've been with him since the beginning. Can you take us through from a medical point of view what his injuries were and what you did to then get him back into the shape we see?
It's been almost 30 years, by the way, and in that day, he had multiple injuries. A third of his knees is missing. We're talking about bone and cartilage and ligaments and muscles and connections, all missing. 17 operations had to be done between myself and Dr. Malcolm Lesevoy, a plastic surgeon.
Was there thought of amputating?
It was, many times. That was really on the table, of course.
Cliff, I got to ask you, I mean, going through something like that, you obviously have a will to live unlike anyone I've personally ever met. Did you ever hit like a low point where you were like, I can't do this, or maybe even give up?
Yeah, that was a great question. I mean, it's like a lot of us facing adversities. You know, we really don't know how to go through that process. We're not trained for it. But for me, there were many more valleys than there ever were peaks. You know, there were so many moments of doubt. I was going through the grievance process where I was angry initially, then became very depressed. But then when I met Dr. Lesevoy, and I have some photographs of me on these parallel bars, and that was kind of the whole changing dynamic right there. I got this enormous support. from Dr. Lesvoy and from Dr. Mandelbaum for me to go out there and be the best that I can be. And that really helped me launch myself into getting through this adversity.
You were so young. Most of us think, oh, my kids inspire me to keep me going.
Right.
Like, what was your motivation to live and to go and to have a life?
Yeah, I think that the thing was just to be normal. I think that was my huge thing. You know, I was 20. I was a late bloomer growing up. And I think that having this removed from me and stripped away, I was a runner. I was involved in martial arts growing up, and then all of a sudden here I'm in a position where I'm learning how to walk again. And so I think that really created that fuel, that created that fire for me to get through this adversity.
How were you able to help him walk again? How were you able to help Cliff overcome this adversity? Because look at this. How did you rebuild his knees?
Well, there was the technical level. I call it the left brain level, and then there's the right brain level. The technical surgeries and all the reconstructive, reparative, restorative things.
With what?
And with tissues, soft tissues. We had to take the medial gastroc, pick it up. We had to move it here, put skin grafts on top. That was just the beginning.
So it was art and science.
It was the science of the art.
Right.
The science of the art. And I looked at him and I realized, just like you heard from Debbie, there's this spirit, this amazing spirit. I looked at him and he said, I can do it. He can dare to dream. He had this victorious spirit inside of him. And I said, one step after the next, one step after the next, and...
Well, one step after the next got you to the Olympics.
Yeah.
I mean, that is no small feat.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Well, I mean, it's 10 years of going through this adversity, a lot of hard work, an enormous amount of inspiration that I got at the time. But, you know, I think that at the end of the day, you have to kind of look back and take that 30,000-foot approach and ask, you know, what is really that foundation to get through that process? Well, it's your network immediately, having superb doctors involved, having that family base. But then ultimately, what I learned, especially through Dr. Mandelbaum, was you got to believe in yourself. And that's the number one step. It's that step of courage that one needs to take when you're facing adversity. And I think that was that learning curve, because when I walked down those parallel bars, you can't imagine, there's millions of signs of doubt in my mind. But, you know, once you achieve that, it slowly becomes a stepping process and a building process to do more things.
But you took that building process and you became part of a canoe club?
Yeah, well, I got my brother got me involved in paddling canoe, and I remember metaphorically he said, you know, use the tools you have, not that you don't. And I couldn't use my legs, so I got involved in this outrigger canoe club locally here in Los Angeles, and it changed my life. And I think that at the end of the day, the most important aspect that I got out of that was not just being physically fit and training all those years, it was the inclusion element, being accepted for the person who I was, no matter what my limitations were or my disabilities.
And to clarify this, when I first heard about this, I said, oh, was he in the Paralympics? You were in the Olympics in '96 and 2000.
Right.
Part of the USA team. That was...
Look at that. Wow.
What an experience it had to be for you. But, Doc, for you, was there a special moment at either Olympics where you realized how far Cliff had come?
Special moment. You know, I just returned from Rio, but thinking back on that one amazing evening in Sydney, in the stadium, and I didn't know that. I know he was at the Olympic. I knew that. But to actually sit there and watch him preceding the Olympic team carrying the flag was one of the most amazing emotional moments.
I'm getting chills right now. Look at that.
To know Cliff Meidl coming through 17 surgeries, his heart had stopped. Those micro steps of adversity, to understanding that he had the wind within, to not only come back and paddle, like Forrest Gump, just keep running, until he made the Olympic team. But not only making the Olympic team, 96 and 2000, here he is carrying the American flag, representing our Olympic team.
Cliff, what was it like for you to carry the flag?
Oh, well, I was very nervous. Here's this aluminum pole. It's kind of drizzling outside. It's conductive, right? So, and then, you know,
you know what? You were so funny.
I walk like Bambi. So the thing is I thought to myself, whatever you do, don't trip. But, you know, my heart was racing through my chest. And I remember taking this deep breath. And I was so proud and honored not only to be chosen as the flag bearer, but, you know, to represent our country. And I looked over my left shoulder. And the only thing I could see behind me was a sea of red, white, and blue for about a quarter of a mile. All of the 500 U.S. athletes behind me.
And you were leading them.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Just unbelievable.
What do you say to people who are facing adversity?
Yeah, well, the thing about it is just like myself, adversity comes in different sizes and colors. We're never prepared for it. But the thing about it is the most important thing. We may not know what the end of the road is, but we got to believe in ourselves. And I think that's the most important step. Trust yourself, believe it. We're going to accomplish it. How are we going to do it? We may not know right away, but ultimately, as we go down through that path, you just got to apply the grit, believe in yourself, work hard. And if you want to get to the very top of the equation, you got to work harder than
Amen.
Coming from you, that's incredible. Doctor, thank you so much for bringing this story. For more on the amazing story, did you have something else?
Just remember, adversity is the engine of unimagined opportunities.
I love it. For more on this amazing story, check out cliffmeidl.com. And for more from Dr. Bert, including his book, go to winwithin.com.
You really are Superman. I believe that. All right, when we come back, Crossroads Executive Chef Scott Jones.
Calamari, Hearts of Palm calamari we're making here.